Call of Duty Black Ops 3 turns 10 years old this year. Hopefully 10 years old today if I get this video out on time. I, Tactic Zombies, turned 20 years old this year. I've literally been playing and watching videos on Black Ops 3 Zombies for half of my life, so it holds a very special place in my heart. So to commemorate the big anniversary, I decided to bring back my big Zombies map retrospective videos, at least for a little while. The last one I did was my Mob of the Dead vs. Blood of the Dead video, and to this day, that is probably still the single Zombies video that I am the most proud of for making here on YouTube. It was my most well thought out and in-depth Zombies video, and I want to give Black Ops 3 the same treatment. The thing is, Black Ops 3 is a big game with a lot to talk about, so I'm going to pace out this series. I'll release each video to correlate with each specific map's 10th anniversary. So this first video will cover Shadows of Evil, and then I'll do a small one to cover the Giant soon after. In February, I'll release my Horizon video, etc. This is going to be a big project, and hopefully pacing it out like that will help me avoid burnout, as well as just being able to keep uploading non-zombies videos between each big map video, so I don't have to dedicate all my time to this project. I'm also going to format these videos like the Mob vs. Blood video, splitting up the video into different topics since it helps to keep me organized. And I'll leave timestamps in the description for each section. But I don't want to waste any more time. Welcome to the Black Ops 3 Zombies 10-year anniversary retrospective. Fall 2013. Following the ending of Call of Duty Black Ops 2 Zombies, the fanbase was pretty split. Despite some incredible heights like Mob of the Dead and Origins, Black Ops 2 Zombies didn't have the same consistent quality of Black Ops 1 Zombies. Plus, the ending of Origins, at the time, the final Treyarch Zombies map released, and as such the current ending of Zombies, was misunderstood as revealing that the game's whole story was just a game played by Eddie and Sam, which really upset the community. Since it's basically no better than ending Zombies with an "it was all a dream" ending, which it basically was. One thing was clear with Black Ops 2 Zombies. The creative director of Zombies at the time, Jimmy Zielinski, who had been spearheading the mode practically from its inception, had lost his spark, as the maps he directed, the Broken Earth maps consisting of Transit, Die Rise, and Buried, plus Nuketown, were very unpopular at the time and still are very polarizing to this day, with the exception of Buried. Pretty much everybody likes Buried. Meanwhile, Mob of the Dead and Origins, which are not only the two most acclaimed maps of Black Ops 2, but also arguably the two most acclaimed Zombies maps of all time, were directed by Jason Blundell, one of the campaign directors of Treyarch. The message was clear. Jason Blundell was more desirable as a creative director than Zielinski, so Blundell took over and Zielinski would end up leaving Treyarch in 2014. Alongside Dave Anthony, who was the main campaign director for the first two Black Ops games, and Jason Blundell would end up filling both of those directorial positions for Black Ops 3. Between Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and 3, there were two other survival modes not developed by Treyarch that would be released. First was Ghost's Extinction mode, which is an extremely fun mode in its own right, but it just isn't zombies. And then there was Exo Zombies in Advanced Warfare, which is an extremely flawed and unbalanced experience that completely failed to live up to the standard that was set by the earlier Treyarch Zombies games. And even to this day, it's widely considered the series' worst iteration of the Zombies game mode. Between the lackluster ending of Black Ops 2 and the failure of Exo Zombies, the expectations were higher than ever for Black Ops 3 to deliver on both story and gameplay. And when the game released on November 6th, 2015, the first thing players would experience with the game would be Shadows of Evil, the game's on-disc Zombies map. Shadows of Evil had to walk a very fine line. It had to feel like a worthy follow-up to Origins while also being accessible enough as the on-disc map that anyone who was buying Black Ops 3 could load it up and have a fun time. Even if they didn't buy the game explicitly for zombies, which, to be honest, most players don't. And this is one of the map's biggest problems, which we'll get into. But first, it's Black Ops 3 now, and a lot has changed since Black Ops 2. Now the game is a 3-hit down system instead of 2, but the actual pace of the game has increased a ton. Zombies move faster, spawn faster, and hit faster. Meaning that from a purely mechanical standpoint, this is one of the more difficult Zombies games, which also helped contribute to how unwelcoming this map was for newcomers. And so I want to start out this video by talking about all the new stuff that Black Ops 3 introduced. And I promise I won't go as in-depth about the core gameplay mechanics while talking about the other maps, I just want to get all of that out of the way here. Shadows of Evil is set in Morgue City, and you spawn in on Easy Street, a little alleyway that opens up into the middle of the map called The Junction. And this is basically the closest thing to a tutorial area that the map gives you. Inside of Easy Street and The Junction are several pedestals, each with a big glowing purple flame. You can go up to one of them and you'll be prompted to hold X or square or whatever to become the Beast, which brings me to Beast Mode. This is one of Shadows of Evil's defining features. Since Shadows of Evil is a pseudo-sequel, and really more than just a pseudo-sequel, to Mob of the Dead, Beast Mode is Shadows' counterpart to Afterlife Mode, albeit with some major differences, like how instead of becoming a ghost, you become a terrifying Lovecraftian abomination. As for gameplay differences, the most major is that you cannot enter Beast Mode by going down like you could enter Afterlife and Mob. This means that unlike Mob of the Dead, Beast Mode doesn't act as a renewable Quick Revive, but that also means that Quick Revive is actually a perk on Shadows of Evil. The abilities of the Beast are also more fleshed out than the Afterlife moveset. The enhanced movement speed and jumping remain the same, although the Beast can't move through certain marked walls the way that Afterlife Mode could. The Beast can shoot electricity from one of its tentacles, which serves the same purpose as it did in Mob of the Dead. This is how you power run all the perks on the map, as well as opening up certain doors and pathways that otherwise can't be opened. And then it's also used for some other map progression and Easter egg steps. The Beast can swing its right tentacle for a melee attack that can be used to break open certain doors and boxes that contain key progression items or power-ups. And lastly, the Beast can use one of its tentacles as a grappling hook to shoot up to certain marked vantage points, and again, this is used for map progression and not much else. The Beast also revives other players incredibly quickly, but that's more of a really niche use. It doesn't come into play too often, but when it does come into play, it's incredibly useful. It can lead to some really clutch moments. The amount of Beast Mode uses you have access to is identical to Afterlife. You can have up to 3 charges at once while playing solo, and only 1 while playing co-op, which incentivizes you to use your Beast Mode wisely. You know, if you have a charge, we're looking at the mark of the Beast on your HUD, located at the bottom left by your points. If it's glowing blue, then you're good to go. If it's red, then you need to wait until next round. Beast Mode lasts about 30 seconds or so, but the more stuff you do, the quicker the timer runs out, and you can keep track of how long you have left by the bar that drains on the bottom of the screen while you're in Beast Mode. And then the way you activate Beast Mode is a little different. Unlike Afterlife, where you shock yourself on certain electrical boxes to enter the mode, Beast Mode is accessed via these flaming pedestals. And unlike the electrical boxes, these can only be used once a round, no matter how many people you're playing with. These are dotted all over the map, so there's usually at least 1 or 2 nearby, but it's something you have to be mindful of, especially on co-op, where managing your Beast Mode use is a very, very big part of the early game. Really, the one thing that Beast Mode lacks in, much like Afterlife, is a way to actually kill zombies. Because sure, you can shock and melee zombies, but it basically just respawns them elsewhere, since zombies killed in Beast Mode don't get subtracted from the round's zombie count. Aside from that though, Beast Mode is really, really cool. And Easy Street and The Junction do a great job at introducing you to Beast Mode, since there's something to use each of its abilities on. There's a couple perks to power up, some boxes to shock for progression, a door and a crate to smash. The door hiding a max ammo or a double point, similarly to how there is the free double points power up in Mob of the Dead spawn room that you needed Afterlife to access. And there's 2 vantage points to grapple up to. On top of that, everything you can interact with in Beast Mode has a bright orange aura around it, which contrasts with the greenish hue that everything else takes on while you're in Beast Mode, so it's really easy to tell what's important once you're in Beast Mode. I think the biggest problem with Beast Mode is that I, and many others, have been using it for a decade at this point, so it feels like second nature. As a casual zombies player or someone playing for the first time, which is really the category that most of the Call of Duty player base falls into, especially back then, Beast Mode was and still is an incredibly daunting system to get a handle of. Afterlife worked since it was in a DLC map, so its barrier of entry was higher to begin with. Beast Mode is definitely something that has a much steeper learning curve, and it just leads to most people looking it up on YouTube, how to set up the map. But connected to the junction are 3 other districts: the Canal District, the Footlight District, and the Waterfront District. Each of the 3 districts follow a similar formula. They have 2 main sections separated by a door, a perk machine to be powered up, and a second level that can be accessed from stairs that need to be powered in the first area, or a door that can be bought in the second area, a tram station, at least 1 but sometimes 2 mystery box locations, a gobblegum machine, plus an extra one at each tram station, and a landmark building that relates to one of the 4 characters that must be accessed using Beast Mode. Even Easy Street / The Junction fits this mold, minus the tram station. The landmark in the Canal District is the Ruby Rabbit nightclub, in the Footlight District it's the Black Lace Burlesque, in the Waterfront it's the boxing gym, and in Easy Street it's the apartment of Nero the Magician, who's one of the 4 playable characters. There's also a secret, in air quotes, 5th District, the Subway. This can be accessed by smashing open a beast door in the first area of one of the other 3 main districts. Inside these doors are closed rifts you can activate. Once opened, the rifts act as teleporters that send you to the subway station, which is located under the junction. Once you activate all 3 of these rifts, you can use them to zip around the map much quicker, although it takes a lot of trial and error and memory to remember which rift sends you where. Also in the subway, there are several more perks, a gobblegum machine, mystery box, and a box you can shock to unlock a door that opens a pathway that leads up into the junction, letting you get into the subway without teleporting. Then there's the tram. It's pretty self-explanatory. It spawns randomly at one of the 3 tram stations at the start of a game, and for 500 points, you can use it to safely take you to one of the other 2 tram stations across the map. Or if the tram isn't at your current station, you can call it for 500 points. The map is just laid out really well with a good mix of claustrophobic areas and some more open ones for training, as well as having a surprising amount of verticality, which really isn't something you ever hear anyone talk about with Shadows of Evil. And much like Mob of the Dead, the map is also designed well for moment-to-moment gameplay, since that's Jason Blundell's whole design philosophy. Aside from maybe some of the upper walkway areas in the different districts, paths and alleyways are always at least 2 player hitboxes wide enough for you to get past other people or even clutch past zombies if you need to. Which is just good game design that some lesser maps can neglect to include. Shadows of Evil also has a pretty well-rounded perk lineup, including 7 in total. Quick Revives in Easy Street, Stamina Up is in the Junction, Juggernog, Speed Coal, and Double Tap, which is still Double Tap 2.0 for Black Ops 2 in this game, are randomized each game between the canals, waterfront, and footlight. But you can tell which perk is where because there'll be a red, a green, and a yellow broken perk bottle on a crate outside of each district's gate. That lets you know which perk is where. And then the subways are Mule Kick and Shadows of Evil's new perk, Widow's Wine. Widow's Wine has several effects that it grants. The biggest and most obvious is that it replaces your grenades with Widow's Wine grenades, which are sticky like Semtex grenades and will catch zombies in spider webs if they get caught in the explosion. The closer the zombies were to the grenade when it went off, the more slowed down they'll become. These grenades also activate if you get hit, which causes one to activate and slow down any zombies around you, stopping them from attacking you. Same as the thrown grenades, the further away they are, the less slowed they become. But no matter how slow a zombie becomes, the effect lasts for 20 seconds. You can have up to 4 Widow's Wine grenades at a time, and like normal grenades, you get 2 at the start of every round, and they refill if you get a max ammo. But once you buy Widow's Wine, a new drop will start dropping very frequently. These spider power-ups that refill one of your Widow's Wine charges, and act as a good way to keep yourself topped up on grenades. And then lastly, Widow's Wine also gives you a melee damage boost, letting you kill zombies with 1 knife up until round 4, on top of giving your knife a chance to web zombies, which keeps them stuck in place. Also, your knife is a green trail once you buy Widow's Wine. Widow's Wine is an incredibly powerful perk that is basically necessary to have at all times with how fast-paced Black Ops 3 Zombies is compared to Black Ops 1 and 2, especially on such a close quarters map like Shadows of Evil. Despite definitely being a bit of a crutch perk, Widow's Wine is super cool, and it's really sad that it never reappeared in future Zombies installments. I mean, there are things like Widow's Wine, but not Widow's Wine itself. There's also harvest pods on the map, which act pretty similarly to the dig piles on Origins, where they can give you loot, but you need a special item to harvest them, the Fumigator. One is guaranteed to spawn in the spawn room, and then there are other locations around the map in the other districts too for more Fumigators. As you pass through the rounds, the pods will begin to grow in size and change color, with each stage representing a tier of loot that can be harvested from the pods. The yellowy green ones give you tier 1 loot, red ones give you tier 2, and purple ones give you tier 3. Simply interact with a pod while you have a Fumigator in your inventory, and the pod will open, giving you a gun, power-up, or even enemies if you harvest a bad pod. But you can only survive so long with perks, wall guns, and the box. Sooner or later, you're going to need to pack-a-punch or die. So how exactly do you pack-a-punch on Shadows of Evil? It's a bit of a process. Inside of Easy Street is a crate sitting in the bed of a truck, placed right in front of the player as they spawn in. You need to break this crate open to obtain the Summoning Key. This is an incredibly important item throughout the story of Black Ops 3, but gameplay-wise it serves the most purpose here in Shadows of Evil, since the Summoning Key is how you unlock Pack-a-Punch. To unlock the Pack-a-Punch, you need to complete 4 rituals to obtain 4 gate worms, which are these creepy little dudes that you need to complete a bigger ritual that actually opens up the Pack-a-Punch machine. There's 1 ritual in each main district, and each one correlates to one of the playable characters. Nero's in the Junction/Easy Street, Jackie V's in the Canal District, Jessica's in the Footlight District, and Floyd's in the Waterfront District. But to actually perform the ritual, you needed an item important to the actual person being sacrificed. You need Nero's lawyer's golden fountain pen, Jackie V's partner's badge, Jessica's producer's toupee, and for Floyd, it's the championship belt from his promoter. And these items all need beast mode to be obtained. The belt and hairpiece, you just need to get to a high place and melee the crates containing them. The fountain pen has you just shock this box on a crane in the middle of the junction so that it drops the box holding the fountain pen for you. The police badge is the most complicated to get, needing you to shock this box to lower a set of bars that are blocking the crate that you need to melee, and then you need to go melee the crate in beast mode. But be careful, because every time you pick up a ritual item, several keepers will spawn in to try and kill you. But the ritual buildings themselves also all need beast mode to be accessed. Nero's apartment, the Ruby Rabbit, and the Black Lace Burlesque all just need you to grapple up to a high point and shock a box to open up a set of stairs or open up the front doors, depending on the location. The boxing gym, fittingly enough, just needs you to break down the front door by meleeing it while in beast mode, which I think is pretty funny. Inside the buildings, you need to interact with these spooky ritual altars to place down the summoning key and then the ritual item, beginning the ritual. This starts a lockdown where infinite keepers will spawn. Honestly, the easiest thing to do is just to train them without killing them. The trickiest part of the ritual is that the keepers have a bunch of rifts they spawn from that basically allow them to show up out of thin air and overwhelm you, so just letting the max number spawn is the way to go in my opinion. It's also worth noting that the actual length of the rituals gets longer depending on how many people are in your game. I'm pretty positive it's 15 seconds per person, so 15, 30, 45, 60, but I can't find any concrete number anywhere online, so take that with a grain of salt. This means that when you're playing in solo, the rituals practically take no time at all, but in a full lobby, you need to think more about what you're doing. Once the ritual is finished, the sacrifice will explode into a big red mist and they'll be replaced with one of the 4 gate worms that you need to pick up. Once you get all 4 gate worms, you can head down to the subway station where the back wall will open up for you, revealing the final area of the map. The Rift. This is a big room with a seemingly bottomless drop in the middle. There are also 4 pedestals, which are the same kinds that you enter beast mode with, around the room that you need to place your gate worms onto. Once you put a gate worm down, it'll start sending a blue beam of light into the rift at the back of the room, as well as trigger a change in the room itself. The 2 pedestals on the sides you come in from will rebuild the walls on the sides of the room that you need to wall run across to get across the big gap. Then the 2 pedestals on the other side will rebuild a bridge in the middle, leading back across the gap. Although the bridge isn't finished, and it's only a way to get back from the other side after you Pack-a-Punch, rather than skipping the wall run when you need to get to Pack-a-Punch. After all the gate worms are in place, you can use one last ritual altar that is by the door that you came in from to open the Apothecant Rift Stone. This places down the summoning key and begins one final lockdown where even more keepers will spawn in to try and kill you. If you survive, you break open the Apothecant Rift, which acts as the Pack-a-Punch machine on this map, allowing you to upgrade your weapons. And while I'm on the topic of Pack-a-Punch, I just want to mention how cool the Pack-a-Punch camo is on this map. It's very similar to the Mob of the Dead Pack-a-Punch camo, but it does have its own differences. Namely that I'm pretty sure there's less negative space on this iteration, with a lot more cracks and sigils in the camo than the Mob version. The actual glowing parts are also a brighter orange here than on Mob of the Dead, but aside from those slight changes, the camos are practically identical. I think I might like Mob's better just because it's a bit less busy of a design, but I still think it's really cool that it shows up here, and only further ties these 2 maps together. This is one of, if not the most complicated Pack-a-Punch quest in any Zombies map, even to this day, which I'm kind of mixed on. On one hand, it's very cool and cinematic, and it does feel like you're undertaking a quest to get Pack-a-Punch. But it can get very repetitive if you play this map a lot in a short time span. On top of this, it's just a bit too much to expect new and casual players to figure out on their own. One of the main criticisms people have for Jason Blundell and his maps is that everything feels like it necessitates a YouTube tutorial to learn. This isn't even strictly a Jason Blundell problem, this is a problem that arises with Zombies maps in general once they start to make things more complicated. Especially if we're talking about a launch map like Shadows of Evil. And it's especially true here since there's no casual alternative to Shadows of Evil, at least not for free. Transit in Black Ops 2 also has a really weird and obtuse way of opening a Pack-a-Punch that the average player likely would never stumble onto on their own, but at least Black Ops 2 had Town as a simpler map to just load up and play. I think when you're making a launch map for a Zombies game, you need to either develop it with a higher amount of accessibility, or you need to offer a more casual alternative since the launch day Zombies content is what the most amount of people are going to be playing. It's what the people who bought the game for multiplayer or the campaign are going to play and see if Zombies is any good this go around. If you want to go all out and get more complex for the DLC maps, that's all good. As I've said, there's a certain expectation that if you're buying DLCs and playing the new Zombies maps, you're already invested in the game mode somewhat. Mob of the Dead did a similar thing with its Pack-a-Punch quest, but I'd argue that map handled it better by having more in-game clues and hints as to what to do. Mob of the Dead had physical maps on the walls of the prison that told you exactly what plane parts you needed and exactly where you could find them. On top of that, the mobsters were always going over the plan and what they needed, since their whole plane breakout plan was something that they were deeply familiar with, and it helps to guide you in the right direction. Shadows of Evil has these maps too, but it just labels the different areas as ritual sites, which is a lot more vague. And I think the big kicker is that the characters don't really provide any useful insight since they're out of their element here. Mob of the Dead just does a better job at handling the same sort of quest, is all. Making a map like Shadows of Evil the only map to play could turn a lot of people away from the mode, and it did. But we'll get more into that later. While opening up Pack-a-Punch, especially if you're a newer player and you're taking your time, you'll more than likely encounter most, if not all, of the map's new enemies. So let's see just exactly what you'll be up against in Morgue City. First up are the Keepers. These guys will try and stop you at pretty much every step of the Pack-a-Punch quest, but after that, they become friendly for the rest of the game. They're very similar to normal zombies, but their health is much lower and they float at you instead of running. Like I said earlier, the trickiest thing with them is that they spawn in pretty much instantly and can start attacking you, so you need to be mindful of their spawn points. Then there's the main boss zombie of the map, the Margwa. It's a hulking 3-headed Lovecraftian squid monster. Nero says they're a mix of a Cerberus and an octopus, which, yeah, that's pretty fitting. They first spawn in on round 8 naturally, but you'll probably run into them sooner if you're opening Pack-a-Punch, since a Margwa will spawn in after your 2nd and 4th rituals, as well as one that spawns in after you complete the final Pack-a-Punch ritual as well. They can swipe you with one of their barbed tentacles, but this only does around as much damage as a normal zombie. The main thing you need to worry about with them is their slam attack that they do if they get too close. This can one-hit you if you don't have Juggernog, and it still red screens you if you do. Thankfully, the Margwas lack any real ranged attacks, so keeping your distance is the best way to deal with them. But you can't go too far away if you're playing co-op, since the Margwas can disappear and teleport across the map to catch other players off guard. So usually it's best to just keep them aggroed on one person and take care of them as soon as they spawn. The whole gimmick with killing Margwas is that they're completely bulletproof over like 90% of their body. Shoot them all you want, it doesn't do squat. To kill them, you need to destroy their 3 heads, which all open at different intervals. Once a head's open, it'll start glowing bright yellow so you know it's able to be shot at, then simply fire away. When you destroy a Margwa's head, you'll get 500 points and then the Margwa will get faster, and then when you get to its last head, the Margwa is running as fast as it can at you. Once you destroy a Margwa's last head, it will instantly die and then you'll get a free power-up. I love the Margwas. Their design's dope. From a purely gameplay perspective, the Margwas are one of the best zombie bosses ever in my opinion. They're in the same vein as Brutus and the Panzersoldat, where they're this big boss that comes in every couple rounds. And while I prefer Brutus over them, I definitely think they're better than the Panzers. Needing to wait for their mouths to open is a great way to make them take longer to kill without just giving them a humongous health bar. And it helps to negate the biggest problem with Brutus and the Panzer, is that once you're Pack-a-Punch, you can pretty much just mag dump them once they spawn in and kill them instantly. The Margwas aren't overpowered, but they're also not too easy to kill. Because yeah, keeping your distance is the way to go, but Shadows is a super close quarters map with a ton of twisting streets and alleyways. And obviously you still have to worry about all the normal zombies on top of the Margwas. They don't have as many cool gimmicky features as someone like Brutus, but the Margwas are a great example of less is more, in my opinion. Then there's the Parasite. These guys have their own dedicated max ammo rounds, basically acting as one of this map's hellhound enemy types. Plus, one will spawn in every single time you destroy a Margwa's head, and they'll sometimes spawn in on their own on higher rounds. Or if you're unlucky, you can get one out of a harvest pod. These guys are these little bug dudes that fly around and they shoot their goop at you. That's basically it. They have barely any health and they barely do any damage, but that's fine because they're popcorn enemies. They're supposed to be more of a nuisance that steals your attention while something more dangerous sneaks up on you and catches you off guard. So yeah, they're annoying, but that's the point. And they don't really show up too often alongside normal zombies, so it isn't too big of a deal. And lastly is the Insanity Elemental, but the zombies community has endearingly dubbed these guys meatballs. They spawn in on max ammo rounds, but not on the first max ammo round, which is nice because it lets you get used to just the parasites on their own before throwing something else to worry about at you. The meatballs are literally just a reskin of the wraps from campaign and multiplayer. They fall from the sky, and once they land, they begin tracking a player and start rolling towards them, screaming the whole time they do. And once they make contact, they explode. That's pretty much it. The way I see it, the parasite's whole purpose of max ammo rounds is to distract you while these guys get the drop on you. They're probably the least memorable of the enemies, in my opinion at least, because of normal gameplay, I feel like they spawn the least common between them and parasites. Unless you do the Easter egg, in which case you remember them a lot, but we'll get to that. I think Shadows Evil has great enemy variety. Obviously the Margwas are the standout, but the Keepers, Parasites, and Meatballs are much appreciated too, even if it's mostly just for how they add to the map's atmosphere. So those are the foes you'll have to face on Shadows of Evil. They may seem daunting, but thankfully the map provides a good selection of tools to help you out, starting out with one of Black Ops 3's biggest additions, the Gobblegum system. Gobblegums are the single most controversial feature not only in Shadows of Evil, but Black Ops 3 as a whole. People have been arguing for 10 years over whether or not they ruined Black Ops 3. Basically, before loading into a game, you can customize your pack of Gobblegums, which are basically magical gumballs that act like perks, granting you different bonuses. They're divided into 4 main types: blue, green, orange, and purple. Blue Gobblegums last for a set number of rounds, green ones last a hard time limit like 20 minutes, orange gums activate once a certain condition is met, like spinning a teddy bear at the box or buying a weapon off the wall, and purple Gobblegums activate with a press of a button whenever you need it, up on the D-pad on console or whatever you bind it to on PC. I don't know, I don't play on PC. You can have 5 Gobblegums in your pack, and you buy them from the Gobblegum machines around the map. Round 1 Zombies Chronicles came out, the game was updated so that the first Gobblegum of the round was free, but if you play offline, then it's 500 points. And then after that, the points scale exponentially as the game goes on after that. The order you get your gums in is also random, and you can only have one equipped at any given time. On its own, that doesn't sound too bad. Well, the controversial thing with Gobblegums is that they're split into 2 categories, Classic and Mega. Classic gums are unlocked just by leveling up, and are for the most part pretty mediocre, if not straight up bad, except for a few notable exceptions. But they are free and unlimited, so you can use them as much as you'd like once you unlock them. The best Gobblegums are the Mega Gobblegums, split into 3 further categories of Mega, Rare Mega, and Ultra Mega. These are rarities, because Mega Gobblegums are the main way Black Ops 3 Zombies was monetized. 2015 was during the peak era of loot boxes in games before battle passes became the standard, so naturally Black Ops 3 has tons of them between zombies and multiplayer. There are the black market boxes in multiplayer and Gobblegums and zombies. Basically, while playing zombies in Black Ops 3, you'll occasionally, usually a few times a game, receive a liquid divinium after spending points. You'll typically get your first one around like round 7 or 8. You can also sometimes get these as rewards for completing a daily challenge. You can spend 1, 2, or 3 liquid diviniums at a time to power up vats in Dr. Monty's factory. It's like if Willy Wonka made scratch-offs instead of chocolate. The factory is this whimsical steampunk screen with fancy lights and perk bottles that glow on conveyor belts in the background, and it's a slot machine. It's a liquid divinium slot machine that gives you Mega Gobblegums at random. The more divinium you spend, the better your odds. With how many Mega Gobblegums are in the game after all the DLC, it's 44, the odds of you getting what you want are still super low. So you can either spend a long time getting diviniums at a snail's pace, or doing a repetitive farming method, which, you know, is repetitive and boring. Or you could open up your wallet and buy a whole bunch of diviniums and save yourself the hassle. Plus, if you get a powerful gum from the factory, you might only get 1 from the factory. It's not like a skin or something where once you get it, you have it. These are individual uses of each gumball that you get from the factory. So if you get 1 Perkaholic, once you use that Perkaholic, it's gone. They also wouldn't be so divisive if a lot of the Gobblegums weren't so good and broke the balance of the game. A ton of them let you bypass the 4 perk limit or set up super quickly, which a lot of people don't like. They find them broken. And sure, Gobblegums are optional. There's only 1 instance in the whole game where a Gobblegum is mandatory to do something, and even then, it's only a classic Gobblegum that you need. I think the only thing that stops this system from being universally hated is that if you dashboard the game before you die, then you get to keep any Gobblegums you used during the match, and Treyarch never patched this out. Probably because they knew that the backlash would be tremendous if they did. But this also isn't a perfect fix, since that match basically never happened in the game's eyes, so if you got a high round or something, it won't be tracked on your leaderboards, if you care about that sort of thing. Personally, I don't really use Gobblegums, and even when I do, I usually just run a full pack of purple classic gums. I only break out the megas when I'm doing an Easter egg with friends, which I think is really the best way to do it. Gobblegums are obviously a system that continues to exist throughout Black Ops 3, but I figured it'd be best to just rip the band-aid off now so they don't have to bring them up too much later down the line. Aside from Gobblegums, there's also a ton of other new toys for you to play with, like the guns that are exclusive to this map. First up is the Bloodhound. It's a snub-nosed revolver with an 8-round cylinder that is the map's starting gun. Unlike most of the other zombie starting guns, which are basically just reskins of each other, like the different 1911s, the Mauser C96, or the MR6, that are all statistically the same, the Bloodhound is actually very different. It's 2.5 times as powerful as the MR6 1911, so it's actually a pretty viable gun for the first 5 or so rounds of the game. The biggest trade-off is that the fire rate is a lot slower since the gun is a revolver. You do use a speed loader, thankfully, so you're not just loading each of the 8 bullets individually, but it's noticeably slower than a magazine. And much like most of the other starting pistols, once you pack a punch to the Bloodhound, it becomes the meat wagon, with identical damage to the Mustang and Sally while also keeping 8 rounds in each gun instead of dropping the mag size down to 6 like the Mustang and Sally or the Death and Taxes. Now I'm also pretty sure that the Meat Wagon name is a reference to Meat Wagon from You Always Win, which I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but that's what I've always thought. And then there's the Bootlegger, Shadows of Evil's exclusive SMG. At least it was exclusive until Zombies Chronicles, where it was added into the World at War maps. The Bootlegger costs 2,000 points and is located in the tram, making it a risky weapon to go for, but it's worth it in my opinion. Or you can get it from the box or pods if you're lucky. It's just a Sten clone, but that's cool because Stens are really cool. It's got really low recoil, 32 rounds at a mag, and decent but not great ammo reserve. But where the Bootlegger shines is as a points gun. If you get the Bootlegger and start using it around round 10 or so, you'll be swimming in points. But it's also powerful enough to put down Margwas. Once Pack-a-Punch, it becomes the Einstein, which I only realized while I was writing this down is a reference to the gun being a Sten. I don't know if the gun's name is just really clever or if I'm just really dense. The damage goes up and the magazine size doubles, but the gun doesn't get any crazy effects or anything like that. The Bootlegger and Bloodhound are really awesome guns that really fit the setting of the map. I love how both of them have a very Art Deco look to them, especially the Bootlegger. It reminds me of a lot of the guns from the first Bioshock game, weirdly enough. They had the same kind of fancy detailing on them there. And yeah, I know engravings give you no tactical advantage whatsoever, I know, but these guns just look very Shadows of Evil-y, if you know what I mean. I just really think the map could use one more exclusive gun to round out its roster. Maybe another SMG, I'm honestly surprised there's no Tommy gun here, or a rifle. Something like the BAR would be really nice to see, but I'm still very happy with what we do have. Shadows of Evil also introduces a new trap, the Chain Trap. There's one in every district and it costs 1,000 points and will shoot chains back and forth between two walls, killing any zombies and players that pass through. It's a pretty standard kill everything follow me trap, but it can also be used to temporarily block an angle of approach for the zombies. They're pretty situational and I don't use them very often, but it's nice that the map has viable traps, even if it doesn't really need them. Shadows of Evil also introduces a new type of mechanic, viable temporary support, in the form of the Civil Protector. These are robot bodyguards that belong to the Morgue City Police Department. They can be called in to help you if you fix their control box in the subway. To do so, you need 3 fuses, and each one can be found in the upper area of each of the 3 main districts. The fuses glow bright blue, so they're pretty easy to find. Once you have all 3, just slap them into the master panel in the subways, and the Silver Protectors go online. They cost 2,000 points, and they look like a human-sized version of the Origins robots, which I think is really cool. They use KN-44s, and they can help you kill enemies and revive you. They can even kill Margwas instantly if they land on top of one after being called in, and you can call them in from these panels. There's one in each district, and they last a couple minutes before breaking down, but there's no cooldown on calling in another one. So if you have the points, you could basically have a permanent extra player in your game. I really like the Silver Protectors. They look really cool, and they can really come in clutch if you're struggling or if you just got points to burn. And then there's the shield. By this point, shields have become kind of a regular feature to see in zombies, with them showing up 3 times throughout Black Ops 2. So for Black Ops 3, the shield was made a bit fancier, because it's a rocket shield now. You build the shield by finding the 3 parts, the window, the main body of the shield, and then the rocket boosters. These spawn in the upper areas of each of the 3 districts, and you can build the shield at any one of the 3 workbenches around the map. There's one behind the boxing gym, one outside the door to the Ruby Rabbit, and one up on a walkway next to the tram station in the Footlight District. For the shield, the pretty much universally agreed upon build location is outside the Ruby Rabbit. And nobody uses the Footlight table to build anything as far as I know, but every map with workbenches usually has one like that people don't use. The rocket shield for the most part is just a typical zombie shield. You can wear it on your back, or you can hold it out in front of you and it'll block zombie attacks, absorbing a certain amount of damage before it breaks. The main gimmick of the rocket shield is obviously the rocket boosters. You have 3 charges, and if you press the right trigger while holding the shield in front of you, it'll send you flying forward, killing any zombies in your path. It's fun, but it's not really practical ever, and you can replenish the charges with a max ammo drop or by finding these rocket booster fuel canisters around the map or in harvest pods that will replenish a charge. The shield can also eat a Margwa ground slam attack but will be destroyed after, but still, it's more than enough to save your life in most situations. And sadly, the ability to plant the shield on the ground has been removed, and this is just due to the fact that there's no shield in multiplayer in Black Ops 3, so it's not like the Black Ops 2 shield that inherited its abilities from that game's multiplayer riot shield. Planting the shield wasn't crazy useful in Black Ops 2, but it was a really fun feature to have if you were camping. But honestly, I could probably count on both hands the number of people who've actually planted the shield in Black Ops 2 instead of just wearing it on their back. So I'm probably the only person who's upset that that feature's gone. And instead of monkey bombs, Shadows of Evil has Lil Arnies. They're these fancy little glass jars with little squid monsters inside, presumably named Little Arnold. You throw the jar and Arnold will explode into a Big Arnold, which is a stationary monster that swings its tentacles around and attracts zombies to itself. Arnies are actually a ton better than monkey bombs since they do a lot more damage during the whole duration of the Arnie, and then they explode afterwards instead of just blowing up right at the end like a monkey bomb does. The one thing you have to keep in mind with Arnies is that Margwas do not like them. They'll be attracted to them but will destroy the Arnie after a couple seconds. Other than that though, the Arnies are just objectively better than the monkeys in pretty much every single way. And then there's the main wonder weapon of the map, the Apothecan's Servant. This is a craftable wonder weapon and it requires 3 parts. First up is the Margwa Heart. This one's easy to get since it drops from the first Margwa that you kill. Then there's the Margwa Tentacle, which drops from purple harvest pods. Still pretty easy, you just need to wait a little while for the pods to fully mature and ripen before you harvest them, which you should really just be doing anyways. And lastly is the Xenomatter. This usually takes the longest to get since it drops from parasites or meatballs, but only after round 12. Once you get all 3 parts, go to a workbench and build yourself one of the most overpowered wonder weapons ever introduced in the history of the game mode. The Servant shoots black holes that open up and suck in zombies. It's basically a Gersh device gun. And that's literally all there is to it. You only get 10 shots total, so ammo is limited, but other than that, it's incredibly powerful. The only things that can get past it are Margwas, but if you shoot the black hole near one, it'll still be sucked into the black hole, it just won't kill the Margwa. And then all the other zombies, parasites, meatballs, they will all be sucked into the black hole. Other than that, the worst thing about it is just that only one player can have it per match, but personally, I'm fine with that. Not every map needs 4 wonder weapons. Thankfully, the other players aren't out of luck though, because they can still use one of Black Ops 3's biggest additions to the mode. Double Pack-a-Punch ammo types. You can double Pack-a-Punch a good chunk of the guns in Black Ops 2 that weren't carryovers from Black Ops 1, but all that did was cycle through some different attachments. The most game-changing one was definitely putting the iron sights on the DSR-50, but other than that, it was just a neat feature, but nothing too crazy. That is not the case in Black Ops 3. In Black Ops 3, double Pack-a-Punching your guns does not affect attachments, since now that's done with weapon kits. Basically, the more you use a gun in zombies, the more it will level up and the more attachments you'll unlock for it. You can apply whatever unlocked attachments and camos you have to any of the weapon kit guns, and every time you get that gun in game, it will have those customizations applied. This is a very powerful feature, mostly because you can put fast mags on most guns in the game, which makes speed cola a lot less important in Black Ops 3. Since that's how attachments work now, double Pack-a-Punching will randomly pick an alternate ammo type from a pool of 5 to apply to your gun. These each have different effects and will randomly but pretty frequently activate while shooting at zombies. There's Thunderwall, which is basically a mini thunder gun, but really the quantum entanglement device from Moon is a better comparison. This causes a big blast of air that goes outwards in all directions from the zombie that triggers the effect, killing a handful of zombies around it, as well as the zombie that the effect got triggered on. Fireworks. This is the most unique, and it's again like one of the QED effects. Once it activates, fireworks will go off on the zombie that triggers the effect, and it will spawn a duplicate of your gun that will spin in a circle and shoot at other nearby zombies, killing them. Honestly, I think it's a very underrated alternate ammo type. Turned. This will turn a random zombie friendly. Drives will go green and they'll get a green cloud around them like the Voltrade zombies in Buried. Then they'll go up to other zombies and start swinging at them, killing them in one hit. Another pretty powerful one. Blast Furnace. When it triggers, your bullet will burst into flames and catch any zombies in its radius on fire, burning them to death. This is super powerful on close quarters maps like Shadows of Evil, since there's no limit to how many zombies it can affect as long as they're all bunched up close enough together. You can kill a whole train with this thing. Deadwire. This is the best one, hands down. It's literally just a Wonder Waff in your pocket. Once it triggers, lightning will arc out from the initial zombie and kill a bunch of zombies around it. Literally the only difference between it and the actual Wonder Waff is that Deadwire kills 9 zombies and the Wonder Waff kills 10. On top of this, Deadwire zombies get stuck in place, whereas the other ammo types don't actually stop zombies from hitting you. And Deadwire activates the most frequently out of all the ammo types, at least in my experience. These ammo types are a real game changer since they really level the playing field. They can be applied to like 95% of guns and basically turn any of those weapons into a mini wonder weapon. You could even argue that long term, normal guns with ammo types on them are better than some of the actual wonder weapons in this game, since they have so much more ammo and kill zombies infinitely anyways. They're definitely not better than the Apothecon Servant though, since hardly anything is, but on some of the other maps, the line is a lot blurrier between which is better. But that's basically everything that the map offers you. There's also the Specialist Weapon, which is a new type of wonder weapon Black Ops 3 introduced that fills a 3rd weapon slot. Right, guess 4th if you have Mule Kick, but whatever. But those for the most part fall more into the Easter egg category, so I'm going to talk about those when we get there. Especially since on Shadows of Evil, getting the Specialist Weapon basically is the Easter egg. Overall, I think the core gameplay of Shadows of Evil is incredibly strong. It really does a great job at bringing zombies forward as a mode in a ton of areas. It can be a tough map at times, but it's never punishing. Like, I never rank it among the hardest maps of the series, at least not as an experienced zombies player. I really do think that where Shadows of Evil drops the ball most is as a beginner-friendly map. But on the other hand, you could also go way overboard in that direction, like Cold War and Black Ops 6, where those games won't let you figure out anything for yourself. There's a good middle ground to reach, even with more of a complex Pack-a-Punch quest, something like Mob of the Dead. Now, I'm sorry for bringing it up so much, but after doing that last Zombies retrospective last year, I have such of the dead brain rot. I know everything about those maps now, and it can't be good for me. But now that we've thoroughly over-discussed the gameplay, let's talk about the characters, and whether or not they do a good job at getting invested in the story at large. Shadows of Evil is Black Ops 3's celebrity cast map, a zombies tradition that spanned from Black Ops 1 to Black Ops 4 that we just don't get anymore since operators have become the norm now. Basically, these are maps where the game's standard crew would be replaced by a group of characters played by celebrity voice actors. You could argue whether or not the first celebrity map was 5, since that map had historical figures as its cast, but the first true celebrity map was Call of the Dead. Obviously, Black Ops 2 had Mob of the Dead, and 3 has Shadows of Evil, and then the tradition was laid to rest with Dead of the Night in Black Ops 4. The cast of characters of Shadows of Evil are 4 people who have sinned by murdering to further their own careers, which has in turn caused the zombies to show up. As the Shadow Man says,
"Your sins serve only as an invitation. An invitation to an evil beyond your imagination."
I'll just refer to them as the Sinners from now on, since their crew doesn't have a really fancy name and it's catchier than saying the characters or the Shadows of Evil crew for the rest of the video. And they consist of Lieutenant Jack Vincent, better known as Jackie V, played by Neil McDonough. He's been in an absolute load of different movies and TV shows, everything from Band of Brothers to Minority Report to Arrow. Jackie V is the detective. He's a crooked cop, and not like a normal amount of corruption, like Gotham City levels corruption. As he says himself, "I'm a good cop, but a bad man." He's also the comic relief of the group. Very vulgar, always talking mad shit about the zombies, comparing the Margot's to his wife, who cheats on him. You know the deal. He also name drops all 4 of the Mob of the Dead mobsters, being probably the most blatant connection to that map that most people would pick up on. He's usually cool as a cucumber, but sometimes the facade slips and you see that he isn't really happy with the life he lives and the choices that he makes. Then there's Jessica Rose, the femme fatale, played by Heather Graham. She was in Boogie Nights and the second Austin Powers movie. Jessica is a dancer at the Black Lace Burlesque who wants to become a Hollywood movie star, and has done some unsavory things to move up in her career, and even worse things to make sure no one finds out about it. She's the anger ball of the group. She hates all 3 of the other members of the crew and is only looking out for herself, which I can see making people not really like her. On the other hand, she's the girl, so a lot of people like her. Up next is Floyd Campbell, the boxer, played by the legendary Ron Perlman, who was Hellboy in the really good Hellboy movies by Guillermo del Toro. Aside from that, he was Clay, the main villain of Sons of Anarchy, Lord Hood in Halos 2 and 3, and he's the narrator in Fallout 1 through New Vegas. Floyd, sadly, is the least memorable of the 4, but that's mostly because he's kind of just the straight man of the group. He doesn't have very many funny lines, and much like Jessica, he doesn't really like the other guys in the group. He does like Jessica though, but he gets shot down by her pretty quickly. And lastly is Nero Blackstone, the magician, played by the one and only Jeff Goldblum, who is Dr. Ian Malcolm in the Jurassic Park movies, Seth Brundle in The Fly, and more recently he was the Wizard in Wicked. He's also the guy from the Apartments.com commercials. Nero is easily the fan favorite of the cast, and a big part of that is just Jeff Goldblum's electrifying performance as him. Nero is a big dork. He's always cracking bad jokes, and he also doesn't swear, which helps him stand out from the others who all swear like sailors. He stutters sometimes, and he's the most scared of the 4, while also being the most knowledgeable about the Keepers and what's going on during the course of the game. This draws a lot of suspicion from the other 3, and there's lots of good dialogue between the other 3 where they put Nero down. He's also the character with the most regret for what he's done, but that really isn't saying too much. And I'll include him here since he's basically the 5th main character, since he's the villain, Tony Hale-Rapt, better known as the Shadow Man, played by Robert Picardo, who's in a bunch of Star Trek stuff, and not really anything else that I recognized. The Shadow Man is the main guiding force during the early game of Shadows of Evil, putting up a front that he's here to help the sinners atone for what they've done and escape the predicament that they find themselves in. Obviously, that isn't true, and he just manipulates the sinners into opening up the rift so that the Apothecans, which are his race of Lovecraftian squid monsters, can invade their dimension. The Shadow Man is great, and is an incredibly iconic character in zombies despite only really playing a prominent voiced role in Shadows of Evil and Revelations, but mostly just here. His appearance and characterization are very clearly inspired by depictions of Satan in American folklore. Not as a scary demon with horns and a pitchfork, but as a well-kept guy in a suit who will offer you everything you can imagine in exchange for your soul. Which is fitting because the Shadow Man is basically just the Call of Duty Zombies equivalent of the devil. Overall, the Sinners are a really fun group to play as, even though they lack much of the complexity that other Zombies crews have. They only have about 25 minutes of quotes each, except for Nero, who has around 35 minutes. When you consider that other maps in Black Ops 3 usually give their characters anywhere from like 30 to 45 minutes of quotes, that's just a lot less to work with. And I get it's because they're celebrities, so they're a lot more expensive to get to record more lines, but another side effect of this is that you'll be hearing a lot of the same quotes from game to game. There's a lot less variety in their dialogue. Another big contributing factor to why they're just more simple is that they're the celebrity crew, so they're only around for one map, but that's fine. They serve their purpose well, and that's all they need to do. My least favorite is definitely split between Floyd and Jessica, but probably leaning more towards Floyd. He's just kind of bland, and Ron Perlman sounds, out of the four actors, the least interested to be there. And I get it, because he said himself in an interview just a few years ago that he doesn't play video games, he just sees them as a paycheck, like another gig. My favorite is definitely split between Jackie V and Nero. To me, Jackie V is the most entertaining out of all of them. And a big part of that is just that Neil McDonough seems to me like he was having the most fun out of anyone recording the dialogue for this game. All of Jackie's lines are very energetic, and it's just hard not to be entertained when you play as him. Jackie V walks the fine line of being a reprehensible character, but not being a hateable character either. And then Nero is, well, he's Nero the Magnificent. He has the most complexity and relevance to the greater plot of the four, and Jeff Goldblum's performance is gold. Bloom. I love that he'll switch between his normal speaking voice and his magician stage voice on a whim. It's great. I mean, there's a reason Nero isn't just the fan favorite on Shadows, he's also just a fan favorite zombies character, period. That's a rough overview of the characters, so let's see how they ended up in this predicament and what exactly happens during the course of the game, and see if Shadows of Evil has a story that's worth remembering. Shadows of Evil is actually surprisingly light on story, even when including all the info from all the phones around the map that act as Shadows of Evil's audio logs that provide extra lore. And we know exactly how everything is laid out in chronological order thanks to the zombies timeline, so that is just how we're going to talk about it, in order. The story starts in the late 13th century, the Great War. It was a war where humanity teamed up with the Keepers to defeat the Apothicans, who are a race of corrupted Keepers that the Shadow Man belongs to and is the leader of. After they were defeated, the Apothicans were banished to the Dark Ether. The Shadow Man was able to avoid his fate and stay in hiding, biding his time while he could plan the return of the Apothicans. In December 1943, the Shadow Man, who now goes by Tony Hale Rapt, hires a reporter to locate the Summoning Key, which is a powerful Keeper artifact that the Shadow Man can use to enact his revenge on the universe. Before the reporter can give him the Summoning Key, Rapt tells him to go and investigate Morgue City for the time being, to take in the sights and smells, as he puts it, and the reporter arrives on New Year's Eve. And a lot of weird stuff starts happening in Morgue City over the next couple of months. The reporter notes how just strange the city is, and how nobody really talks about it. On January 15th, there's a meteor shower, which sounds cool, but people don't act like it's any big deal. And then the mold shows up. A weird, foul-smelling fungus that starts to pop up in the dark, damp alleyways of the city. And just like with the meteor shower, nobody says a thing about it. And then people start getting sick. First, they were just suffering from delirium, but eventually they start to waste away from whatever's afflicting them, and then finally the people start talking about what's going on in Morgue City. The first person who the reporter gets to open up is an elderly fruit seller at a small market who says that something really similar happened in New England in 1882, but he clams up when the reporter tries to learn some more. The next time he's at the market, the reporter gets the fruit market to tell him a lot more. And the reporter says that even if what the vendor's saying is crazy, he doesn't think the vendor himself is crazy. The vendor says that when he was a child, his uncle would get drunk and tell him how a dark force has cast its shadow over Morgue City, and the only thing stopping the apocalypse from coming was the Order of the Keepers. The reporter also says that by this point people in the city are scared and are talking more, and he says that he's heard several whispers about the Order of the Keepers, and that he thinks it's a cult of some kind. Some even say you can hear chanting coming from underneath the city. Rumors abound about human sacrifices and other occult rituals, and the police won't investigate them. Whether they're being paid off by the Order of the Keepers, or they're just too scared to investigate, the reporter doesn't even know what to believe anymore. After this, the reporter gets tasked to track down info on 4 people for Mr. Rapt: Jackie V, Floyd Campbell, Jessica Rose, and Nero Blackstone. The reporter gets their contact information to Rapt and says that the city is starting to get to him and that he does all this stuff for Mr. Rapt without ever even meeting him in person. The reporter finishes his message by saying that he's excited for Mr. Rapt to arrive in Morgue City so that they can finally meet one-on-one. But soon after this, the reporter receives a letter signed with the letter M saying that he isn't to give the summoning key to anybody. On April 10th, Jessica, a burlesque dancer with dreams of making it big in movies, learns that a photographer took compromising pictures of her that could jeopardize her whole career. And then on April 20th and 21st, a ton goes down. On the 20th, the Shadow Man starts to make his move. First, he pretends to be a company executive and talks to the lawyer of Nero Blackstone, a formerly famous magician whose career is going up in smoke, as Magicians Weekly puts it, also calling him the worst magician of the year. He tells Nero's lawyer that Nero's wife has taken out substantial loans in Nero's name that he only has 15 days to pay back before the company seeks repayment themselves. Having no money due to his wife's spending habits, Nero calls up his lawyer to confirm that their life insurance policy is all paid up and up to date. After this, the Shadow Man pretends to be a movie director who's interested in casting Jessica in a leading role, since he's looking for an all-American girl, a real firecracker, as he puts it. And he tells Jessica's producer that the part is hers, but Jessica knows that those photos could ruin everything, so she calls a photographer to come to her place with the prints of those compromising photos so the two of them can make up. Next, posing as a journalist, the Shadow Man speaks with the promoter of Floyd Campbell, who's an up-and-coming boxer who hasn't been in the ring in a year and a half or so, but has a fight scheduled with title contender Tony King. If Floyd wins this fight, he has a real shot at the title. The Shadow Man says that Floyd is only a journeyman fighter. Basically, he's good, but not good enough to be a real contender, to be one of the greats. This makes the promoter nervous, so Floyd wants to guarantee that he'll win, guarantee a shot at the title, deciding that he'll wear brass knuckles under his gloves during his fight with King. And lastly, the Shadow Man pretends to be an officer with internal affairs at the Morgue City Police Department and tries to get Jack Vincent's partner to admit that Jack is on the take, since the mayor is trying to crack down on corruption in the city. After learning that internal affairs is sticking their nose where don't belong, Jack plans to kill one of his old informants, who is a snitch who could rat him out. April 21st, the day when shit really starts to hit the fan. Nero misses a call from his lawyer stating that they can prove that the loan documents are fraudulent, as Nero was in a coma from his Amphibious Man show on the day that they were signed, so his wife forged his signature. But since Nero misses the call, he goes ahead with his plan and straps his wife to the Wheel of Death. Yes, that's actually what this stunt is called, and throws the knife square between his wife's eyes, killing her and cashing in on her life insurance policy. Jessica misses a call from her producer that he thinks that the movie director, who, reminder, is the Shadow Man, is suspicious, and he just doesn't have a good feeling about him, so the movie plan, forget about it. On the bright side, he's gotten her the lead role in a musical that he and his partner are financing, so she's going to Broadway. But not hearing this, Jessica gets the photographer to her apartment and handcuffs him to her bed. The photographer's expecting some, kinky shit, but instead Jessica grabs a pair of scissors and stabs him to death, making sure that those photos of her never leak to the press. Jackie misses a call from his partner saying that he doesn't have to worry about internal affairs and that he has his back, since he's his best friend, but Jackie ends up arranging a meeting with the snitch where he pistol whips and executes his former associate to try and tie up his loose ends. Floyd's fight with Tony King goes as he planned. He wins the fight and he cashes in, but King ends up dying from the injuries he sustains during the boxing match, and the referees paid off to look the other way. Floyd ends up missing a call from his promoter that he's in the clear. He doesn't need to worry about journalists or an investigation from the boxing commission or anything, and that he has his championship fight scheduled for next year, January 15th. And then also on April 21st, Edward Richtofen arrives in Morgue City to locate the summoning key for himself. The next day, Richtofen learns the reporter has the summoning key. Richtofen confronts him, and the reporter shows his letter to Richtofen and tells him to stay away before attacking him, so Richtofen ends up killing the reporter with a knife to the chest in self-defense. April 25th, the big day. The sinners' paths all cross at the Black Lace Burlesque where they're all knocked unconscious. They all awaken in the purgatory version of Morgue City that is Shadows of Evil. They're all in different parts of the city, and they all notice that they've been branded with the mark of the beast on the back of their left hands. They all bump into each other in Easy Street and they form an uneasy alliance, and this is where the map begins. The Shadow Man poses as an ally and says that only with his help can the sinners atone for their sins and obtain redemption, and because none of them know what's going on, they have no real options other than just to do what he says. They get the summoning key from the crate in the back of the reporter's truck, and then they locate all the ritual items and perform the sacrifices. Nero sacrifices his lawyer with his fountain pen, Floyd sacrifices his promoter with the championship belt, Jackie sacrifices his partner with his badge, and Jessica sacrifices her producer with his toupee. As they go about these rituals, they're attacked by the Keepers, who are trying to stop them, and the Shadow Man says that the Keepers are their enemies, so the sinners believe him and fight back. After this, they go under the city and complete the final ritual to open the Apothecon Rift. And after this, the Shadow Man reveals his true form and that the sinners have been tricked into opening the gateway for the Apothecons to invade their dimension with the plans to completely assimilate it. The sky goes red and a giant Apothecon monster emerges in the sky above Morgue City. It turns out that the sinners have been helping the villain this whole time and that the Keepers were just trying to stop them from unleashing an evil beyond their own comprehension. But all hope's not lost, at least not yet, as the Keepers offer to help the sinners stop the Shadow Man. The sinners build Apothecon swords and upgrade them into Keeper swords to help them fight the Shadow Man's forces. At this point, Nero remembers that he has a book in his apartment that talks about the Apothecons, so they go into his apartment and read it. The book says that the Keepers are the good guys who protected the multiverse from the threat of the Apothecons, and this assures the sinners that now they're making the right choice. Then the Keepers give the Sinners a magical flag that they bring to different points to charge up, and give physical form to several Keeper ghosts to help them. And the Shadow Man throws everything he has at the Sinners to stop them. After the flag is charged, the Sinners and the Keepers begin one last ritual in the subway and battle the Shadow Man, defeating him and sealing him in the summoning key. Then they destroy the Apothecon creature in the sky with the help of the Keepers, and they win the trust of the Keepers, who now view the Sinners as heroes worthy of protecting the summoning key, and by extension, the multiverse. As the Keeper is handing the key over to the Sinners, Richtofen appears suddenly out of a portal and snatches it away and apologizes before disappearing just as quickly as he showed up. Without the summoning key, the Sinners have no chance of defeating the Apothecons, and the next day their entire universe, Dimension 63, is destroyed. I really like the story of Shadows of Evil in a vacuum, but I don't love what it did to the story of Call of Duty Zombies as a whole. I know it's the main thing people say when they describe the map, but the story itself is very Lovecraftian in nature. There's more obvious stuff like how the Apothecons are squid monsters, and that New England is mentioned as having had gone through some pretty similar things as Morgue City, since a ton of H.P. Lovecraft stories are set in New England. But a lot of the themes are like that as well, like just unknowable ancient beings and the futility of humans in the face of said beings. As much as it sucks that the characters are doomed to die, it's very fitting for a Lovecraftian horror such as this. And then there's also the very common trope in cosmic horror that is insanity and the fragility of the human psyche, which we get a nice taste of with the Reporter. We hear over the course of his phone calls and we read about in his encounter with Richtofen, which wasn't revealed until Der Reisendrock, but for the sake of the story I included it here. He kind of starts to lose his mind in the 4 months he's in Morgue City. But I don't know how much credit you can give to Shadows of Evil or Jason Blundell for all this, because a lot of the Apothecons and the Lovecraftian side of the story feel less like inspiration and more like now that he was in charge, he wanted to make Lovecraftian old gods and beings part of the story because he had just read Call of Cthulhu and just wanted to do that, when he should have been reading Herbert West's Reanimator. And there's nothing wrong with wearing your inspiration on your sleeve, but Shadows of Evil isn't doing that so much as it isn't wearing a shirt and it's showing off its full back piece tattoo of Cthulhu that it just got. These comparisons are getting really out of hand. But the actual plot is very basic, with not a whole lot going on during the actual events of the map. Most of the important context and lore happens in audio logs, which, can kind of be applied to other Zombies maps, but the biggest thing that goes without explaining here is the rituals and who exactly you're supposed to be sacrificing. And that's because the intro cutscene just kind of fails to introduce any of these characters save for the lawyer and, maybe the promoter. I mean, for years, I thought that Jackie's partner and Jessica's producers were the people they killed in the intros, and that they were sacrificing their souls again or something, but I'm just nitpicking at this point. The Shadow Man is a great villain, and as I've said, he's a great devil-esque character who manipulates the sinners for his own ends. My biggest complaint with him is just that he isn't more prevalent in Zombies, because he might be my favorite villain in the series. I think he's on par with Ultimate's Richtofen. But by the end of the map, he's locked in the summoning key and he has to go back to conniving, which really is what he's best at. And since it's such a similar map, I'm just going to compare the story to Mob of the Dead's, which I think is just way stronger. As I said in my Mob of the Dead video, I think that map has the single best contained story out of any Zombies map because everything about it you can pick up mostly through the character dialogue and the very simple Easter egg. There are no hidden radios or phones tucked in corners to listen to. All the audio logs on that map are fed to you at the end of the Easter egg, ensuring that you can't miss any of the story, and it's just a big thing that lets that Easter egg land with as many people as it does. But that's also very out of the ordinary for a Zombies map. Shadows is much more typical in that you need to track down radios and basically do homework in order to get the full context of the map. But it makes for a less engaging story on its own, especially if you aren't already engaged in the Zombies storyline. I think the actual content of the radios is really solid though. The Reporter's story is really interesting to me, and it does a really good job at showing that normal people are aware of the Keepers and Apothecons, at least to some extent, as well as doing a really good job at building up the creepy atmosphere of Morgue City. And then there's the tragic element that most of the murders could be avoided had Jackie, Nero, and Jessica just picked up their damn phones and had it explained to them that everything was going to be okay. But this ties into what I think is the most interesting thing that Floyd has going for him, because his promoter was in on the plan to kill Tony King to some extent. This is a surprising contrast to the others, and I think there's an argument to be made that Floyd is the most evil or sinister of the 4 characters, and that his promoter was the one sacrificed who, I'm not going to say he deserves what he got, because nobody deserves to explode into red, but he's the least innocent of the 4 sacrifices, which fits the very dirty and grimy vibe of the waterfront district of the map that is associated with Floyd, but I'll get more into that with the atmosphere section. And with celebrity cast maps like this where the characters are only around for one map, you really do need to utilize the Easter egg and the quotes to endear people to characters before they're gone, and I just think Mob of the Dead did a better job at that. The performances on that map were strong all around, where here it kind of feels like Jackie V and Nero carry the cast. Not that the Sinners are a bad Zombies crew, as I said earlier, I do really like them. They're definitely more fun than the Mob of the Dead cast, but as thought-provoking characters, I find the mobsters more interesting, so I find that story more engaging. But like I said, I'm much more mixed on what Shadows of Evil did for the zombie storyline as a whole, and that mainly has to do with how this is the map that introduced the concept of the multiverse into COD Zombies. Because I just don't care for the multiverse as a storytelling device at this point. I'm not opposed to multiverse stories outright, but especially nowadays, it's such an overused trope in pop culture, so the mystique of multiverses is kind of gone. That, and to me, it can really weaken the impact of most stories that are set inside a multiverse. But Call of Duty Zombies is definitely a multiverse story I like more than most other multiverse stories because it mostly centers around two-ish main dimensions. The original timeline, which was Nocturne Totem to Buried, and then Dimension 63, which is Origins, Mob of the Dead, and Shadows of Evil. And then there were also several fractured timelines that emerged because of a decision that we'll talk about in the Giants segment of the retrospective. So to me, Black Ops 3 really feels more like a time travel story with like some butterfly effect elements. It's not as heavy-handed with the multiverse aspect, if you get what I'm saying. It also helps for me that we don't see any real variants of the core 4 characters aside from just Primus and Ultimus. But those extra variants do exist as we know through audio logs, and that alone can seriously undercut the emotional impact of the story. I mean, just look at what Reckoning did with Black Ops 6's ending. Yeah, Primus and Ultimus all died at the end of Black Ops 4 to destroy the multiverse, but it's okay now because there's a new version of the original 4 characters that walk through a portal. Please buy Black Ops 7, I beg you. I know there are a ton of people who see Shadows of Evil as a jumping the shark moment for zombies, and I don't think you can really argue with that. It is. Yeah, World at War through Black Ops 2 have fantastical elements, especially on a map like Origins, but it was mostly grounded with a good mix of real-world conspiracy theories and just like retro sci-fi tropes. And it formed a pretty grounded foundation for the story to be built upon. As soon as you bring in alternate universes and dimension-destroying space worms into a story like that, you are going to lose some people who are invested because of the pseudo-groundedness of it. And that's fine. I don't think it's right to try and shame people for having been turned off from the story during Black Ops 3, because I know there's a ton of people who feel that way. The story is just something that a lot of people in the community find themselves very split on, so let's change the subject to something absolutely everybody can appreciate and can agree is top-notch: the atmosphere and vibes of Shadows of Evil. Shadows of Evil leans hard into its 1940s noir vibe, which is incredibly unique and not something that's ever really been done before or since in Call of Duty Zombies. And this is really one of the main things that helps Shadows of Evil be so memorable, and is why it's considered a top-tier map in many people's eyes, including myself. A strong atmosphere can make a good map great, and a great map fantastic. By far the most iconic and memorable part of Shadows' atmosphere is just the soundtrack. I could just say that it's jazz, but classified soundtrack is jazz too, but that sounds nothing like the Shadows of Evil soundtrack. It's more of like a big band-y sort of sound, like from the 40s. Which fits because, again, this map is set in the early 40s, and it sounds like music you'd hear in an old neo-noir detective movie. The Shadows of Evil music is beyond iconic. I'd even go so far as to say that there's an argument to be made that it has the most iconic music in the mode's history aside from like the main Damned theme for the Zombies mode. But there's really not a lot I can say for the Shadows soundtrack because you'll have been hearing it for this whole video. It's just really catchy and really memorable music that immediately immerses you in the setting when you hear it in-game. But the catch is, that's only the round change music. The rest of the map's music is just kind of okay. Each district has its own ambient track and they're good and they serve their purpose well, but they just aren't very memorable. This is a pretty unfortunate step down from Mob of the Dead, where damn near every room of that map had a distinct and often memorable theme song. There's also Apocalypse Ascendant, the song that plays during the Pack-a-Punch ritual and the final step of the Easter egg. And it's really good, but it's taken from the campaign, so... But aside from the music, the actual atmosphere of Morgue City itself is incredible. The 4 different districts each have very distinct feels from one another. I was even thinking while I was writing this that the districts kind of personify the character who belongs to it. The canal district is really nice if you stick to the upper level of the street, but the actual canals at the bottom are filthy, like how on the surface Jackie Vincent looks like a good man and family man, police officer, but under the surface he's as corrupt as they come. The Footlight district is extremely flashy and is the nicest of the playable districts, like how Jessica is an extremely flashy character. This is the one I'm the least confident in. I can't really think much more of a connection here than that Jessica worked in the Footlight district at the Burlesque. The Waterfront is the most run down of the districts because Floyd is the most down on his luck of the 4. I kind of feel bad saying it, but he's broke. I mean, if you've seen Rocky, most boxers don't make a ton of money off of boxing. That's why Floyd pulled his little stunt with the brass knuckles for a shot at the title and the riches that he thought would ensue after that. Then there's the Junction, and I'm kind of at a loss for how to connect it to Nero like I was with the Footlight. Nero's apartment I can absolutely connect to him because it's literally filled with Nero banners and other magic props and the like. It's practically a monument to himself, which I think fits well with his sense of entitlement and kind of self-importance. And despite the whole zombie outbreak thing, the map is for the most part pretty cozy, with a lot of warm oranges and reds for lighting, especially in the different burlesques and clubs around town. And Morgue City just looks cool. Art Deco is an awesome style of architecture, and it gives the map a ton of character that it simply wouldn't if it was just designed with a more modern architectural style. But for me, the thing that really ties the whole vibe together is just the light rain that persists for the whole match. You know, it's not raining hard enough to be overbearing or really even noticeable during gameplay, but it's just prominent enough to give the city a bit of a gloomy vibe. Honestly, I think one of the strongest comparisons I can make for Morgue City is Gotham City from the Tim Burton Batman movies and Batman the Animated Series. I mean, look at the main art for the map and tell me you couldn't see Batman on one of these rooftops. That's right, you can't. But thankfully the map isn't lacking in creepier aspects either. The biggest one is just the abandoned subway station under the Junction. This is the one part of the map that really feels like it's trying to be unnerving, and it definitely succeeds. I don't think it's gonna be in anyone's list of scariest zombies locations, but the whole place has just a very derelict vibe. What with the collapsed tunnels and just abandoned trains sitting down there. It kind of feels like the whole thing could just come down at any time. And then there's the wall with all the pictures of missing people and writings that is just the cherry on top of the "you should not be down here Sunday." The subway station, also referred to as the Rift due to housing the Apothecon Riftstone, has the one really good ambient track on the map too. It has this constant ticking clock in the back of the track, and a lot of creepy bells and just otherworldly sounds that almost sound like they're supposed to be keeper noises. It's really unnerving, and it fits the area perfectly. And honestly, it's the one ambient track in the map that I think comes anywhere close to songs like the Infirmary theme from Mob, or Death Bell from Origins. And then connected to the subway station is the actual Rift room where Pack-a-Punch is, and this is nothing like anything else in the map. The walls you run across are adorned with carvings depicting the Great War, hinting towards the bigger picture of the story. The room is also a ton bigger than the area you can actually play inside of. Not only is there a seemingly bottomless drop in the middle of the room, there are more structures behind the actual Pack-a-Punch that stretch on for further than you can actually see. The actual Pack-a-Punch machine itself is unique on this map too, since it's the rift that the Apothecons use to invade the dimension. It's this giant round slab with red Apothecon symbols around the edges and then just all over the middle of it too. And it has chains keeping it in place, which is, you know, a little foreboding. And when you actually open it up and use the Pack-a-Punch, a giant barbed tentacle is what actually takes your gun and gives it back to you upgraded. This area is where the Keepers live under Morgue City, and this is where people can hear them chanting from. There's something very creepy about the thought that an entire civilization could be living right beneath you that you have no way of knowing about or accessing, even though the Keepers who live here are the good guys in the Great War. There's also just a ton of smaller parts of the map that come together to add to the Lovecraftian vibe as well, like the harvest pods, the Cthulhu statues around the map, the ritual altars, and the rooms that have the rifts down to the subway station. These little nooks are filled with a ton of props, despite the fact that most people will just be running through here so fast that they'd never notice them, which is a level of detail that I can appreciate. There's Cthulhu skulls, and I mean in a couple of them there's even a map for Origins and a map for Mob of the Dead, only just confirming that they're set in the same dimension. The last real big thing is the mystery box design for the map, which is completely unique and has never been seen since. It sits on a stone slab that has these blue glowing Apothecon symbols on the front, but the thing with this map is that the mystery box itself is alive, and you cannot convince me otherwise. It's very Cthulhu-esque with a squid with 6 glowing eyes on top and tentacles and these almost rib-like bones that wrap around the front and side and retract when you hit the box. There's also orange translucent egg sacs on the front, and you can see some kind of apothecary creatures gestating inside. I think they're supposed to be parasites, but they look more straight up like facehuggers from Alien, which I think that's one of the big inspirations for the aesthetic of this box. It's very xenomorph-esque. Especially with those ribs, they literally just look like the legs of a facehugger to me. The box doesn't even play music when you hit it. It just plays some diegetic sounds and then fog starts to come out of the front of the box. The inside of the box is just gross too. The bottom part is filled with a foggy liquid that I'm going to assume is water since Cthulhu comes from the ocean, but there's nothing on the map saying it's water for sure, so it could be some weird gross squid fluid. And then the inside of the lid is all gross and fleshy. It even has some pulsating bits that I think are supposed to be its lungs when it's breathing. Basically what I'm saying is that the mystery box on this map is perfect. A living mystery box is so unique, and the closest thing I can compare it to is the Chaos Story mystery box from Black Ops 4, since that was an amalgamation of different people affected by the Sentinel artifact. But the Shadows box is very gross and alien. Dare I say, it's Lovecraftian. And for as small of a detail as it is in the grand scheme of things, stuff like unique mystery box models goes a long way to making maps like Shadows of Evil stand out. And that's all without even mentioning how drastically the tone shifts once you unlock Pack-a-Punch. After you open up the rift, the Apothecans let themselves into Dimension 63, and the apocalypse begins. The most noticeable change is that the sky goes red after this point, and this is like the map going from Batman the Animated Series Gotham City to the new Batman Adventures Gotham City. And something that might take longer to notice, it definitely took me a bit longer to notice at first, is there's now a giant Lovecraftian monster sitting in the sky above the city with the sole intention of destroying the world. The one thing with the atmosphere that I know some people don't like is that after you unlock Pack-a-Punch, there's also a red filter that gets applied to the screen. It's not crazy overbearing, but honestly, I kind of agree. I just prefer the way the colors look pre-Pack-a-Punch. But still, there's a way you can get rid of the red filter if you want to do the Easter egg, but you get rid of it by doing the Easter egg, which is actually our next topic. Shadows of Evil is just vibes. There's literally nothing else like it in zombies. I think part of it is just that the 40s noir aesthetic is actually a very weird choice for a zombies map. But the music is what really makes it work. If this map had dropped exactly the same but just uses the basic round change from like World at War through Black Ops 2 before the maps got unique soundtracks, I don't think the map would be half as memorable, honestly. Jason Blundell did a great job directing Shadows of Evil in the atmosphere department, but his big claim to fame with his zombies map is obviously the Easter eggs. So let's see if Shadows of Evil lives up to that standard. The main Easter egg quest of Shadows of Evil is split up into two main sections. The first, which makes up around a third of the egg, is called Apocalypse Ascendant. This is just everything revolving around doing the rituals and opening up Pack-a-Punch, and since I've already explained all that, I'm not going to retread here. The second part, and the bulk of the quest that most people would actually refer to as the Easter egg, is called Apocalypse Averted. Although, fun fact, according to data miners, it was originally going to be called Playing for Keeps. Once you open up the Pack-a-Punch, the majority of the egg is spent acquiring and upgrading the Apothecan Swords, which are the specialist weapon of the map. The first step to getting the swords is acquiring an egg. There's this wall in the subway station that when in beast mode you can see has 9 Apothecan symbols around it. You need to shock the correct 3 symbols to open up the wall. The symbols are randomized every game, so you need to find them every game. You do this by taking the tram, as you can see each of your symbols in different windows along the different tram routes. The actual locations are marked on maps around the map as well, usually maps at the tram stations or near the tram stations, so if you pay attention to those, then you'll be able to find the symbols with pretty much no problem. The easiest route to get them is to take the tram from the Footlight to the canals to the waterfront, and the waterfront back to the Footlight district. Once you find your 3 symbols, go back to the wall in the subways and shock the 3 symbols with beast mode. This opens up a little nook where the 4 swords are being sheathed, and each one has an egg inside of the big pedestal that they're all kept in. Grab the egg, and then if you turn around, you'll see a big wooden crate. Break this to reveal a statue of Cthulhu. You can place your egg on the statue in one of its tentacles, and then get 10 kills nearby to charge up the egg. Once done, the egg will ding and it'll start flashing white, letting you know that you can pick it back up. There are 3 more of these Cthulhu statues around the map, one in each of the main 3 districts. Go to the different statues, break the crates that they're in, and then charge the eggs. Once you fill up your egg at all 4 statues, it'll be fully charged, and you can place the egg back in the podium that you got the egg from in the first place and grab your specialist weapon, the Apothecan Sword. This thing is pretty sweet. For starters, it's blue, which is cool, and I'm pretty sure it insta-kills zombies, but I'm not sure as I never really used the base sword for very long into the high rounds. On top of that, it does a ton of damage to Margwa heads while they're open, so there's a nice risk versus reward aspect of the sword, where you can get a quick kill on a Margwa, but you also have to get into their ground slam range to do so. The sword also has an alt attack where you just slam the ground in front of you and shock nearby zombies. It's basically just a reskin of the gravity spikes for multiplayer, but it's still cool nonetheless. Once everyone has acquired the base swords, the step is complete. But to do the Easter egg, you're going to need more than just the Apothicon swords. You need to upgrade them into the Keeper swords. The process to do this is pretty simple, if a bit time consuming. First, you go to the sacrifice altar that correlates with the character you're currently playing as, and there will be a ghost keeper floating above the altar holding the Arch Ovum. This is basically another egg you need to fill, but the method is different. Right outside of each ritual building, with the exception of the junction where it's in front of the spawn room, there is a red ritual sign on the floor. Placing the Arch Ovum into a ritual circle will do two things. Firstly, it'll recharge your Apothicon sword if you don't have it charged up all the way, and secondly, it'll spawn in Margwas for you to kill. The first ritual will spawn in one Margwa, and all the subsequent ones will spawn in two. Once you kill the Margwas that spawn in, the ritual will finish and the Arch Ovum will be filled up by 25%. Do this at all 4 circles to fully charge the Arch Ovum, then return to the ritual site where you received the Arch Ovum from in the first place. Give the fully charged Arch Ovum back to the Keeper Ghost, and in return they'll give you the Keeper Sword, which is the upgraded Apothicon Sword. The Keeper Sword is red instead of blue, and it has a longer duration than the normal Apothicon Sword, and it swaps out the lightning attack for an attack where you send the sword out on its own and it'll get kills for you while you get to swap to a different weapon and use your guns if you want to. Or you can just keep swinging the sword while you have the other sword flying around for you. This is probably a hot take, and I know the Keeper Sword is objectively a lot better, but I prefer the Apothicon Sword over the Keeper Sword, mostly because I like the slam attack more than sending the sword out on its own. I think it's just more interesting of an attack, and I prefer the blue aesthetic. And as an actual step of the Easter egg, upgrading the swords is probably going to be one of the steps that takes you the most time to do, since you can only do one Margwa ritual per round, so it'll take you at least 4 rounds to complete the step if everyone in your game starts upgrading your swords on the same round. It doesn't bug me too much, since you can definitely get the swords upgraded by a low enough round where the rounds aren't very long, so you can basically knock out the rituals back to back to back to back. But if it takes you a while to get your base swords, this step can be a bit of a time investment. But after you get your swords upgraded, you're basically in the end game of the Easter egg. Once the final sword is upgraded, you can head to Nero's apartment and interact with this big book that's laying open-faced on the ground in front of his bookshelf. The book will start floating in the air, and then you can head back to the subway station where there'll be a flag for you to pick up. Picking up the flag begins easily the hardest part of the Easter egg, which the community has very creatively dubbed the flag step. You need to charge up the flag by placing it inside of these lightning purple spots on the ground throughout the map. Let's use the junction for example right now. There's 2 in the junction, and you place it down, you have to defend it, then you go place it down another one, defend it, and then once both spots are finished, you take it to the ritual altar for that district. When you get in front of the ritual table, the flag will be placed down, and then it'll send a beam into the Keeper Ghost, and it'll give them a physical form. And this will complete the step, and then a Margwa will spawn in for you to kill, signifying that you've completed the step. Then you need to do this for the other 3 Ghost Keepers on the map in the canals, waterfront, and footlight districts. And it's pretty much the same thing. Charge the flag at 2 spots, then put the flag down by the Keeper Ghost, they become physical, Margwa spawns in. It's a pretty repetitive step. But much like upgrading the swords, you can only complete 1 district per round, so this is another one that'll take you at least 4 rounds, but it could easily take you more. The challenge comes from the fact that while the step is active, the only enemies that will spawn in are meatballs and parasites. And when you place the flag down to charge, the meatballs and parasites will just send everything they have at destroying the flag. If they do destroy the flag, you need to start that district over. And the flag is very fragile, so that's where the challenge of defending the flag comes in. But on top of this, the Shadow Man will also occasionally appear to destroy the flag himself, but you just need to shoot him before he does his big attack, which will instantly break the flag if it lands. The difficulty and infamy of this step just comes from the pure number of enemies that the game throws at you, and again, how fragile the flag is. And it just gets harder the fewer people you have in your game, since each player will have to cover more ground when it comes to defending. Thankfully, the game is very generous with max ammos in this step, so use your Apothicon Servant, use your swords, shotguns, whatever you have, and you should be able to overcome the step with, hopefully, little difficulty. But it will probably be a lot of difficulty. But once you beat the flag step, you're at the boss fight. Go down to the Pack-a-Punch room and interact with the 4 keepers you gave physical forms in the flag step, and if you're playing in 4-player, each player needs to interact with a different keeper to give them their sword. And the keepers are floating at each of the 4 pedestals that you put the gate worms on to open Pack-a-Punch. As you start interacting with the keepers, the Shadow Man will appear in the middle of the room protected by a shield of energy around him. Once they're all ready, the keepers will break his shield and the room will become sealed. This means that you can now shoot the Shadow Man. After he takes a bit of damage, he'll teleport to a different spot in the room and you'll need to shoot him while he's there. Keep shooting him as he pinballs around the room, and eventually he'll end up floating above the altar where you triggered the Pack-a-Punch ritual. While he's there, you need to interact with the altar, and you'll place down the summoning key, which will suck up the Shadow Man, rendering him defeated. And if you don't defeat the Shadow Man quick enough, then he will go back into his shielded state, and a Marg will spawn in as punishment. But you can just interact with the Keepers again immediately and try again. This fight is just way too easy, especially if you know what you're doing, and double especially if you use the Fatal Contraption Gobblegum, since a death machine completely trivializes this already very easy fight. You still have to deal with zombies, and there will be Margos if you're failing to beat him, but usually you can just beat the Shadow Man so quickly that the other enemies won't have any time to really become a factor in the difficulty. And if you're playing with less than 4 people, then this is the end of the Easter egg for you. But if you do have 4 people, or if you're playing on PC and you have the mods that let you do the final step with less than 4 people, you're on to the final step. The current round will be frozen, and all of the beast mode pedestals around the map will be disabled. Margos will start spawning in, but their head glow is now purple instead of the yellow that it usually is. Each time you kill one of these purple Margos, a beast pedestal will become active again. Beast mode is also pretty much infinite in this step, although Margos will still track you and try and attack you in beast mode, and your bar will drain if you run over these purple sigils on the ground. You can also become infected in this step, where a purple aura will surround the borders of your screen, and if you don't cure yourself, it will kill you. To cure yourself though, it's pretty simple. You just need to run into these white wisps that are absolutely everywhere during this step. To beat the step, you need to shock these electrical boxes that are in every tram station around the map, all 3 of them. Each box will electrify the stretch of track from that station to the junction, turning the track blue. You need to call the tram to a different station so it passes through the junction, and have all 3 boxes shocked at the same time. The tram will hit the giant gateworm and destroy it periodically, and then the 4th player, who should be sitting in the little middle area at the bottom of the junction, will shock all 3 of the keepers that have assembled there, and they will shoot their beam up into the sky, beating the step. The trickiest thing about this step is just the timing of it all. If you shock the keepers while the tracks are electrified but the gateworm is still there, then they'll shoot their beam, but it'll be blocked by the gateworm, won't do anything. And if you destroy the gateworm while the tracks aren't electrified, he'll probably be back quicker than you can shock all the tracks and get all the keepers electrified. But if you do everything correctly, then the keepers can shoot their laser at the Apothicon monster in the sky, triggering the cutscene. And the cutscene is very simple and pretty quick. The laser destroys the Apothicon creature in the sky, the keepers offer the summoning key to the sinners as they've proven themselves as worthy heroes and redeemed themselves. But then Richtofen shows up, doesn't explain himself, and the whole dimension is doomed to be destroyed the next day. That's Apocalypse Averted. Which is pretty ironic that that's the name of the egg, since the apocalypse was definitely not averted, but I guess Apocalypse takes a rain check, just doesn't roll off the tongue as well. It's a surprisingly simple and easy Easter egg, which works well as the launch map Easter egg. There's a good chance that this was a lot of people's first Easter egg, especially for people who didn't play the DLCs of Black Ops 1 and 2. And I really like that the first 2/3 or so of the egg are spent acquiring items that make you, the player, stronger. It makes it feel like you're gearing up for a big climactic battle. Too bad there isn't one though. Yeah, the weakest part by far of Apocalypse Averted is the ending. The fight against the Shadow Man is far too easy, probably the easiest boss fight in the game, and the scale and style of it all doesn't make up for the lack of difficulty since there really isn't much scale or style. You're just shooting a guy in the Pack-a-Punch room and then sealing him inside a bocce ball, that's it. And the last step feels anticlimactic as well, since it's a puzzle step. I have to give Shadows props since it's one of only 2 maps I can think of off the top of my head that have any step following the boss fight. But this feels more like a step that you would do in the beginning of an Easter egg to make it take longer to solve. I feel really bad for the people who first beat the Shadow Man boss fight in 4-player and then had to try and figure all this out, because there's nothing indicating that these boxes can be shocked. But thankfully we live in a time where we know how to beat the step, and once you know what you're doing, it really isn't too bad. The ending cutscene is a nice little cherry on top as well. Plus, as a little bonus, once you beat the Shadow Man, the silver protectors on the map will be upgraded for the rest of your game. They'll be gold plated now, and their KN-44s will be Pack-a-Punch. But in addition to the main quest, Shadows of Evil has a whole host of side Easter eggs, and a lot of which are really cool, so let's talk about them. First up is one you can do right at the beginning of your game after spawning in. For a brief window at the start of each game, the Shadow Man will be looking down at you from the fire escape that's connected to Nero's apartment before disappearing once you start to kill zombies. All you need to do is shoot him. This will immediately skip you to round 5 and will give you a bonus 1,000 points. Then you can shoot him again, which sends you to round 10 and gives you an extra 4,000 on top of the last 1,000 points. And if that still isn't enough for you, shoot him one last time to go to round 15 and get an extra 10,000 points, leaving you with 16,500 points. This Easter egg is really fun if you want to skip the slower paced early rounds, but not really a viable way to skip setting up, since you still need to use beast mode to unlock pretty much everything, and you basically waste all of the uses of it that you would have had between rounds 1 and whatever you end up on. But if you go all the way to round 15, the points you get are pretty much enough to open up all the normal doors on the map, so that's nice at least. A smaller bonus to start your game off can be found inside the dry cleaners right outside of the spawn room. By the cash register on one of the hanging suits is a laundry ticket. Cook a grenade so that it explodes right next to the ticket, or you can just throw a widow's wine grenade that sticks onto the ticket, and then the ticket will move into a crate next to you, and it lets you see that this is actually Sal DeLuca from Mob of the Dead's laundry ticket. Pick up the ticket and you'll receive a free 500 points. Getting the laundry ticket is basically just a part of everyone's routine while playing Shadows at this point. The 500 points it gives you is nice at the start of a match, but definitely won't make or break your game. Still, for how easy and quick this Easter egg is to do, there's really no reason not to do it. And speaking of Mob of the Dead, the Icarus, which was the plane that the mobs was built on this map, can be seen flying over Morgue City after you open the rift and the Apothecant invasion kinda kicks off. You can even hear its engine going, so you know when to look up. And this is just a fun Easter egg that doesn't give you anything, but it's just one of the many things connecting this map to Mob of the Dead. You can upgrade the trip mines on this map into either donut bombs or holly cake bombs. To do so, you need to use trip mines to get one kill in front of each of either the 3 holly cake carts or the 4 donut carts. The weird thing with this Easter egg is that kills by the donut carts gives you the cake trip mines, and kills by the cake carts give you donut mines. But yeah, once you get the kills, your trip mines will now be either a donut or a cake depending on which quest you did, and they'll throw either donuts or cakes around when they explode. A super easy quest to do, and trip mines kinda suck in Black Ops 3, so I don't ever do it, but I still think it's worth doing these quests once for yourself, at least to see what they're all about. I mean, after all, they do take practically no effort. Much like its predecessors, Mob of the Dead and Origins, Shadows also has a jump scare Easter egg. Once you open up Pack-a-Punch, head to the little area outside the boxing gym. To the left in the distance is a tall bow with a red light shining from it. Look at the light with a sniper rifle and you'll be jump scared by a PNG of zombie Richtofen. And honestly, this is probably the lamest jump scare in all of zombies to me. The picture doesn't fill the whole screen, and the fact that you can just see the image zoom in and out makes it feel a lot less sudden than the jump scares that have come before. And the picture itself is just a lot less startling than most of the other zombies jump scare pictures. And also, outside the boxing gym is a green light on the dock, which is a reference to the green light at the end of Daisy's dock in The Great Gatsby. I'm going to assume that you had to read that book in high school too, so I'm not going to go super in-depth explaining this one, but I think it's really cool that it's there. Well, either it's a Great Gatsby reference or a transit reference, but my bet's on a Great Gatsby reference. In the boxing gym, you can head up into the manager's office that has a bunch of photos of Treyarch devs along the wall. Crouch and interact with this one next to the one that looks like Edgar Allan Poe. This will turn on noir mode, which shifts the game to monochrome colors, and it's a really cool gimmick. You can upgrade your little Arnies on Shadows. First, you need to get 100 kills with the Arnies, then you can go to Nero's apartment and throw an Arnie at this top hat, throw one at this bow tie in the boxing gym, and throw one at this cane in the Ruby Rabbit. Then throw an Arnie onto the stage at the burlesque, and he'll start doing a dance routine with the hat, bow tie, and cane you collected, as well as he'll have 4 gateworms as backup dancers. Once he's finished, your Arnies will now be purple and will deal infinite damage, killing zombies forever. This is an Easter egg that's always worth doing if you have Arnies, since you'll probably just get the 100 kills naturally by playing, so you may as well get the upgrade to keep your Arnies from crapping out on the high rounds. And the Arnie dance is really cute, so it's a win-win. You can also upgrade the rocket shield on this map. You need to kill 10 zombies with a single rocket blast, and you'll hear the sound of bowling pins being knocked over. You need to do this 13 times in total to replicate getting a perfect game in bowling, and then your shield will be upgraded into the Goddard apparatus, which has 4 rocket charges instead of 3. Yeah, this is not worth the hassle at all. You can find the body of the reporter after Richtofen killed him. He's through this window by the tram station next to the Ruby Rabbit. You can tell it's the reporter because of the knife in his chest and the letter with an M on it. You can get a free random Mega Gobblegum on this map. Go to the room in the canals with the 4 silver lion statues. Throw a Widow's Wine grenade into each of their mouths, making sure to actually get the grenade into their mouths. If you do this, a small white gumball will spawn in one of the statues' mouths. Pick up the gumball and then go to the junction, and you can find an ice cream parlor with a poster of a Gobblegum machine in one of its windows. Right behind the poster is a little serving dish. Place a small gumball onto the plate and then pass a couple of rounds. Once you return later, the gumball will be larger and you can interact with it, and this will give you a free random Mega Gobblegum that isn't currently in your pack. To me, this is one that's just always worth doing. Maybe you'll get something cool like a Perkaholic or a Killjoy, or maybe you'll get something along the lines of Crawl Space or Bored to Death. You don't know, and the randomness of it is what makes it fun. This is also just a nice way to test out different Gobblegums that you might not have. You can get a Margwa helmet on this map, and it's probably the most difficult side Easter egg to do. First, you need to have killed 6 Margwas throughout the game, but that'll just happen on its own. Once you collect the upgraded sword, 6 Margwa hearts will spawn around the map, and you need to shoot all 6 of them while riding the tram, doing this within 2 tram rides. If you buy the tram a 3rd time, haven't shot all 6 hearts, they'll all respawn. The best way to do this is to take the tram from the waterfront to the Footlight District, and then Footlight to the canals to cover all your bases. Shoot all of them, and a Margwa roar sound effect will play. Now you need to check one of 5 locations to pick up your Margwa helmet. There's a spot in the Burlesque, in the Ruby Rabbit, in the gym, in the subway station, and there's one in Nero's apartment. Basically, all the main spots of the map have a spawn location. You won't see the helmet itself, instead there will just be a white flashing light in the spawn location. The helmet not only looks cool, but it also gives you damage resistance to Margwa attacks, which can really come in handy. If you can get around to doing this one, I would recommend it. And lastly, there are music Easter eggs, of which there are 2. First is Snakeskin Boots, which is basically Shadows of Evil's theme song. You need to activate 3 little radios around the map. One is on a desk in the office of the boxing gym, another's on a bench in the Footlight tram station, and the last one's on a table inside the Ruby Rabbit right next to the front door. I love Snakeskin Boots. It's an incredibly unique song for zombies, and it fits the tone of Shadows of Evil perfectly. It's one of the rare examples of an Easter egg song that wasn't composed by Kevin Sherwood, which I think also helps it feel different. It's a jazzy big band piece with lyrics about something strange from far beyond, everything being not quite as it seems, so it has a distinct lovecraftian, said it again, undertone. It's also just really catchy. In the decade since the map has dropped, the instrumental version of Snakeskin Boots has become a go-to choice of background music for zombies YouTubers, myself included. Snakeskin Boots is just a certified banger. The second one is Cold Hard Cash by Antonia Bennett. To play this, you need to get 3 pieces to assemble a microphone in the Burlesque. The microphone stand is in Nero's room, the cable is down the canals, and the microphone itself is on the subway station hiding under a bench. Now on the stage in the Burlesque, there will be a microphone that activates the Easter egg song. This one is still good, but I just don't like it as much as Snakeskin Boots. It's much more of a slower, kind of lounge jazz song. I don't know the exact genre, but it is just a much slower song. This is a song that I honestly enjoy listening to a lot more when I'm not playing zombies, so if this were the only Easter egg song, I'd probably be a lot harsher on it. It's also worth noting that one of the main round change singers, the one that goes like, that one comes from this song, which is pretty cool. And I think that's pretty much it. Shadows of Evil just has a great lineup of Easter eggs. There are ones that help you, lore ones, and the main quest itself is one of my personal favorites to replay. So with all that being said, why was Shadows of Evil so divisive when it came out? If you ask this question online, the main answer you'll probably get is just that Shadows of Evil was too complex and nobody gave it a chance, which is partially true, since as I demonstrated, a great deal of this map is pretty complex, especially for a casual player. But that answer misses probably the biggest factor, and that's just that Black Ops 3 was a much different game when it launched, and as most would agree, it was a worse game. There's a couple ways you can go about playing pre-patch Black Ops 3. If you're on Xbox like me and you own the game on disc, also like me, you can delete the game and then disconnect your console from the internet, then download the game off the disc and you'll be playing an unupdated version. I assume you can also do something similar on PlayStation. If you'd rather not do all that though, there's a way you can experience pre-patch zombies gameplay in Black Ops 3 as it is today. The Nightmares campaign. I'm not going to go super into Nightmares here since I already did a big video on it earlier this year that if you're interested in the subject, you should go check that out. But basically, the core physics and gameplay of zombies in Black Ops 3 was much different at launch, and it made the game a much harder experience pretty much all around. The biggest and most game-changing difference is just how the zombies behave. The zombies in Nightmares still behave like this since that mode was never updated by Treyarch, so if you want to see what I mean, then you can just run around that mode for a couple minutes. When the zombies hit you, you slow down and lose momentum, making you easier to hit again. And this makes training a lot more difficult, as if you get hit, it will only open you up 2 more hits. It also makes it hard to get past zombies in tight spaces. In modern Black Ops 3 and most other games in the series, you can sprint past a couple zombies in, say, a hallway and still take a hit or 2 and be fine. In pre-patch Black Ops 3, if you try to juke past zombies and one hits you, you'll slow down and likely go down. People have compared it to how the zombies feel in World at War, where they're almost sticky when they hit you. So the stickiness of the zombies combines with their increased speed and aggression and the close quarters design of the map makes pre-patch Shadows of Evil a decent bit more challenging. The map itself isn't much more difficult, but the way the game functioned at launch means that it punishes your mistakes a lot more. It's honestly kind of a fun change of pace if you don't find modern Black Ops 3 all that challenging. If anything, to me the sticky zombies feel worse in Nightmares, and I think that's just because in that mode you have jetpack movement, so the loss of momentum feels a lot more jarring. But this is coming from someone who has probably thousands of hours playing zombies throughout my entire life. For a beginner, the increased challenge of the game and the complexity of the map would just be too much. And thus, Shadows of Evil and Black Ops 3 Zombies' reception at launch was surprisingly mixed, especially when you consider how nowadays it's considered the magnum opus of the series by the general zombies community. I think the only other game that is held in as high regard universally is Black Ops 1. Obviously, Treyarch knew something had to be done, so they started to roll out updates. By DLC 1, the sticky zombies were fixed, and then more quality of life changes would continue to roll out all the way through the release of Zombies Chronicles, leaving the game in a much better place than it was. But aside from the sticky zombies, there are also a lot of smaller changes that added up to make this version of the game feel very different. Gobblegums are very different in this version of the game. They cost 500 points at the start of a round instead of 0, and you can only buy 1 Gobblegum per round instead of 3. Also, there's only 1 Gobblegum machine active at a time, and the Gobblegum machine moves, like the mystery box. This honestly doesn't sound too bad on paper, since one of the things that makes Gobblegum so broken is that you're pretty much always within arm's reach of a machine, especially on some of the later maps. The problem is that there's no way of actually knowing which Gobblegum machine is active at any given time. There's no light in the sky like the box has, or lightning strike like the Wonder Fizz has. So you need to just go run around the whole map checking all the gumball machines like a complete dumbass. Yeah, I'm glad that this didn't stick around for long. Gobblegums are also just a lot weaker here, since most of the super overpowered gums were added with the different DLCs. The most powerful mega here is like Perkaholic, and even then that's pretty tame compared to some of the Zombies Chronicles gums, like Power Vacuum. In Black Ops 3, when you pick up a max ammo, there's a little animated icon at the top of the screen to let you know. On Shadows, this was originally orange and had a picture of Cthulhu, which really fit the theme of the map. Lovecraftian, I'll say it again. But sometime after launch, Treyarch changed it to the icon from the Giant, which is blue and has a teleporter and then the Group 935 logo in the background. And this is just an unnecessary change that I don't really like. I get that now every map has the blue icon, but Shadows does fit the theme a lot better. It would be especially cool if each map had its own max ammo icon, but at the very least, they could have let Shadows keep its icon. In this version, the shield icon is different, and it doesn't go away when the shield breaks, which sucks. And it also doesn't track the current health of the shield, so it's really easy to have your shield break and just not notice because the game doesn't tell you. The Apothicon Servant seems harder to build on pre-patch Shadow, since the Mark with Tentacles seems to be harder to get from purple pods, but this may just be me and my time playing. In modern Shadows, the tentacle is pretty much always in one of the first couple purple pods you harvest. But in one of my games of pre-patch Shadows, I had to open like 10 pods to get the tentacle, which was pretty frustrating. And speaking of the Apothicon Servant, you can pack-a-punch it by doing a glitch in pre-patch Shadows. You basically just switch to the Servant while holding the button to pack-a-punch, and if you time it right, you'll pack-a-punch the Servant. This changes the black holes to red and gives you a ton of surplus ammo, and the black holes last a noticeable amount longer. The gun also has a different name when you pack-a-punch it, so they clearly intended for it to be pack-a-punched at some point in time. This led to just endless speculation and theories about there being some undiscovered Easter egg to pack-a-punch the Servant legitimately, but alas, there's no way to pack-a-punch the Servant in modern Shadows of Evil. There's also just a couple smaller changes that I noticed while I was playing to get gameplay footage that I didn't notice while I was playing for the sake of writing the script. First of all, the door out of the spawn room is now 750 points instead of 500 points like it is nowadays. This isn't a big change, but it did really throw me off because that's always the first thing I do, and I think the first thing most people do on Shadows of Evil is just sprint right ahead and buy the spawn door since it costs 500 points. I couldn't do that, and so I was very confused. The KN-44 is still called the ARC-7 in the launch version of Black Ops 3, which that is a whole can of worms that I am not going to get into right now, maybe in a later part of the retrospective, but I was always under the impression that it had been changed from the beta, and that when the game actually launched, the KN-44 was the KN-44, but no, this was a change that happened post-launch. The zombies also just get faster at a lower round in the launch version. I mean, you get like joggers on round 2, it's nuts. But yeah, most of the difficulty in this version definitely comes from the actual setting up process. Once you get set up, it really isn't all that different from modern Shadows of Evil, but the early rounds are much more punishing. And honestly, that's pretty much it. I was expecting there to be a lot more differences between pre-patch Shadows and the updated version based on how some people online talk about it. I mean, if I wanted to play a really different version, I'd track down a copy of last gen Black Ops 3, but that is a topic for another day, believe me. Plus, I've already spent enough time talking about Shadows for one video. But the differences that are there add up, and they make it a substantially less forgiving map to play, and I believe that, without a doubt, this helped contribute to the map's icy reception at launch, and the negative reputation that it had for quite a few years. Does Shadows of Evil hold up 10 years later? I think absolutely it does. It's an incredibly fun map with a phenomenal atmosphere that's like nothing else that the mode has ever seen. The story and characters are reminiscent of Mob of the Dead while also doing their own thing, even if it doesn't live up to the heights of Mob of the Dead, in my opinion at least. The map jumps headfirst into the new Apothicon lore that the mode would have going forward, and I honestly think that was for the best. Some people were still weirded out and felt that it was too weird to change, but I think that introducing everything all at once in a mostly self-contained story that was able to indulge in all the tropes of Lovecraftian horror was the smart thing to do. rather than had they tried to ease into it more with the other maps in the game, which feel much more like traditional zombies maps thematically. Where Shadows of Evil really falls short is as a launch map. It was just too alienating for new players to click with the way they did with Town or Kino, and the general jankiness that Black Ops 3 launched with didn't help. On top of this, if the map is the only one you have access to, doing the setup process every game gets very exhausting after a while. Black Ops 3 is considered to be the golden age for zombies as a game mode, but if I'm remembering correctly, and this might just be me, it only really started to feel like that once Horizon Rock released, and Black Ops 3 was in a much better state. That's when I remember the buzz around Black Ops 3 really becoming positive. But nowadays, in the state it's in, Shadows of Evil is a blast. It's a map that I can always return to and just get lost in, and I love it for that. But what comes after Shadows of Evil? Well, a lot does, but first we need to revisit a new take on an old classic, and find out just where Richtofen's going with that summoning key. Join me next time as we delve into the secrets of the Giant. This is a big passion project of mine, and if you made it to the end, then thank you sincerely. It really means a ton. Obviously, I've got a follow-up video on the Giant that will release soon, and it will be much shorter. If both of these videos do well, then I plan on continuing this series for the 10th anniversaries of the rest of the Black Ops 3 maps, following the DLC season through next fall to cover absolutely everything. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to show your support, as it really means a ton. I'd like to possibly hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If I could do that, that would be awesome. Peace out and God bless. I'll catch you next time.